America is in a state of collapse. You can see it in everyday life. Now, during the first year and a half of Donald Trump's second term, the collapse has accelerated. But this collapse goes far beyond our leaders, our economy, our position on the world stage. We can see it happening within our churches, once the foundation of our country. If you haven't noticed, church attendance is down. Churches of every denomination are shuttering their buildings across the country. Now, this act alone is evidence of a declining America. The religious foundation this country was built on is crumbling before our very eyes. And for the most part, this collapse isn't just because people stopped believing in God. This collapse is completely self-inflicted. Hi, I'm David Tomsic, and this is Clear Signal. Today we're going to analyze the largest Protestant denomination in the U.S., the Southern Baptists. We will start with this number, 16.3 million. That was the Southern Baptist Convention at its peak. Let's go back to the year 2006. The SBC was the largest Protestant denomination in America. 46,000 churches, $1 billion infrastructure, the institutional backbone of evangelical Christianity in America. But today, they're down to 12.3 million. Easy math. 4 million people are gone. The SBC has continued to see a decline in membership for 19 years in a row. In a report released about 10 days ago, the SBC reported membership was between 12.3 and 12.7 million members. Now, they called that good news. But was it? That was not a recovery from decline. That's a death spiral, and I'm going to show you the math the leaders of the Southern Baptist Convention don't want anybody to see. Let me tell you exactly what the Southern Baptist Convention said on May 5th, 2026. This is important. They released their annual church profile, and their CEO, Jeff Lorg, said, and I'm quoting directly, "We are grateful. Southern Baptists continue to show growth in key metrics like baptism, worship attendance, and Bible study participation." Growth. He said growth. Not really. Membership down 390,312 in a single year, down over 3%. Number of affiliated churches down 268. In 1 year, 268 communities of faith shuttered. Weekly attendance is up by 3.6%. Now, they're proud of that number, and they probably should be. Until you learn that attendance is still 1.7 million people below where it was in 2009. 16 years of erosion with 1 year of partial recovery, if those numbers can be called recovery. You see, that's what they call growth. 390,000 members lost in 1 year divided by 365 days. That is 1,069 people leaving the Southern Baptist Convention every single day. That's not a statistic. That's a signal. A signal the leadership of the SBC refuses to see or even understand. Now here's the full arc. I want you to see this. In 1972, the Southern Baptist Convention had 12.3 million members. 2006, they peaked at 16.3 million. At 2025, they are back to 12.3 million. They are back to where they started exactly 53 years ago. All that growth erased in 19 years. The longest sustained membership decline in the convention's 181-year history. So it's easy to see the math here. 16.3 million minus 12.3 million, that is 4 million people who walked out the front door. If those 4 million people formed their own state, they'd be larger than Louisiana. That outnumbered the entire population of New Zealand. 4 million Baptists gone. The SBC wants you to focus on baptisms. 263,075 baptisms in 2025. Okay, it sounds like a lot. That's up 5%. 5 consecutive years of baptism growth. They're very proud of that. So there were 263,000 baptisms, but they lost 390,000 members. My math says that's a net deficit of 127,000 people in a single year, even with the growth in baptisms. That means people are being baptized and then they're leaving. On that, I have a personal note here. I attended an evangelical church, and many times there were a group of people who started coming to church. New people. Of course, this always brought excitement. New people coming to fill a growing number of empty pews. They told the pastor they wanted to be baptized. There were families, sometimes groups of friends, and many times it was just one person. Now they had to take a baptism class. That was required, and they did. Here's where the catch is. Unfortunately, after the baptisms were over, these people never came back. It was like they were filling a bucket list. Trip to Paris? Check. Trip to the Grand Canyon? Check. I need to get baptized? Check. These people were believers that didn't attend a church regularly but wanted to be baptized. So they found an evangelical church that would gladly do it. Unfortunately for the pastor and the church, these people never intended to stay. So it's a good thing that the Southern Baptist Convention still baptizes people. People still want to follow Jesus. But that doesn't mean it's a revival. That doesn't mean their church is growing again, because quite frankly, it's not. What we are seeing is a leaky bucket, and the hole is getting bigger than the faucet. So here are the numbers the SBC has buried in the fine print. They now have 46,608 churches. As I mentioned before, that's down by 268 from last year. Now, those aren't just statistics. Those are buildings, parking lots, Wednesday night potlucks. Generations of families are now without a church they attended their whole lives. I said generations. Think about that. At the current rate, 3.2% decline per year, the SBC will drop below 10 million members by 2034. That's not that far from now. And that's not a prediction. That's just doing the math. Now here's where the evidence makes this look even worse. February 10th, 2019. The Houston Chronicle publishes a bombshell investigation claiming there were 700 sexual assault cases in Southern Baptist churches. 700 abused people. This occurred across 2 decades. Accusations of sexual abuse by pastors and church staff. Accusations hidden from the members, hidden from the public, buried by the SBC's leadership. We know that 700 files documenting these abuse cases were kept in a secret internal database that the SBC's executive committee maintained. It did not disclose to the churches they claimed to lead. Let me say that again. The leadership of the Southern Baptist Convention kept a secret list of accused sexual abusers, and they hid it. In May 2022, an independent firm, Guidepost Solutions, released a 288-page investigation, paid for by the SBC itself. The report found that executive committee leaders stonewalled survivors, dismissed complaints, and in their own words, prioritized protecting the SBC from liability over doing the right thing and protecting the people in their pews. Let's stop here and think about how disgusting that is. They protected the institution, not the victims. Now, this is the same playbook the Catholic Church ran for 40 years. The same script, just different letterhead. And then there is the smoking gun. In February 2025, the SBC quietly abandoned its promise to build an abuser-offender database, the database they committed to after the 2022 report came out. The accountability measures that survivors waited years for. They promised it, and then they killed it. Is any of this biblical? I mean, they tell you they believe every word in the Bible, except the ones that hold them accountable. This is clear signal. If this analysis is reaching you, hit subscribe. Then push the like button and share this with someone sitting in those pews right now. People need to understand the reality of what's happening in our world today. This video is designed to wake up the people in those congregations who deserve to know what the people running their institution have done. That's not division. That's truth. Let's get back to the video. Now, the Southern Baptists have another skeleton that continues to pop out of the closet. Racism. The Southern Baptist Convention was founded in 1845 to defend the rights of slaveholders. Think about that. While the denomination has formally apologized for its legacy of slavery and condemned white supremacy, the problem still exists. Keep in mind that a large majority of white evangelicals, which would include the Southern Baptist Convention, voted for Donald Trump. Trump's policies have led to the elimination of affirmative action programs. He has declared war on immigrants. His Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, has purged black leaders in the military. The support of Donald Trump is polarizing within the church. A continuing point of tension is the political alignment of many white Southern Baptists with the broader conservative political base. Several prominent black pastors and theologians have departed from the denomination, citing a lack of support for racial justice movements, resistance to addressing structural inequality, and the broader political tone of national evangelical leadership. The Southern Baptist Convention wants loyalty and trust. They ask for your tithes to pay salaries, building costs, and insurance. But when the bill for accountability came due, they walked away. That's not a mistake, that's a decision. So why does this keep happening? Why does a 181-year-old institution lose 4 million members and respond with a press release about baptism statistics? Here's my theory. The Southern Baptist Convention is not a church. It's an institution. It's part of the religious industrial complex in America. And these institutions don't do penance. They do PR. They do cover-ups. When the Guidepost report dropped in 2022, the SBC faced a choice: go forward with genuine structural reform, which is painful, costly, reputationally damaging, or manage the optics. A few personnel changes, a task force, a strongly worded statement. Of course, they chose optics. The abuse database was announced to manage the news cycle, not to create accountability. When they quietly killed it in February of 2025, barely anyone noticed. No breaking alert, no front page story, just a policy memo buried in denominational communications. That's how all institutions survive scandal. They wait for the news cycle to move on. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking. You might be thinking to yourself, but baptisms are up. That's a real number. Maybe this really is a spiritual renewal. Let me show you why that argument doesn't hold water. The baptism growth is happening on a shrinking basis. Fewer churches, fewer members. A 1 to 47 baptism ratio, meaning one baptism for every 47 members. That's an improvement from last year, one baptism for every 51 members, right? That's good. But 16 years ago, that ratio was significantly stronger. The trend line still runs downward. Attendance is up 3.6%, but it is still 1.75 million members below 2009 levels. You don't call a post-collapse partial recovery growth unless you're managing a narrative. The math doesn't lie. The narrative does. Here's the deeper theory. This is one harder to say out loud. The Southern Baptist Convention made a deal with political power. Starting in the 1980s and accelerating through 2010, the SBC aligned itself with a specific political identity. They traded theological authority, the authority to speak about sin, redemption, and accountability, for political influence. That trade had a cost, and the invoice is now due. When you ask people today why they left the Southern Baptist Church, and researchers have asked thousands of them, the most common answer is not theology, it's politics. This is especially true with young people. Pew Research tells us the share of Americans identifying as white evangelicals is declining. Not because America is abandoning faith, but because the SBC brand has become synonymous with a political tribe. This is not just happening there, but it's happening in evangelical churches across America. There are a lot of white evangelical Christians who wanted the SBC to grab and hold on to political power. However, there are thousands more who understand how unbiblical this theology is, and those people have chosen to leave rather than be defined by a political party. Here's what those institutions that try to fuse church and state together don't understand. That fusion doesn't just create gradual decline, it creates sudden collapse. You've watched it happen with mainline Protestant denominations in the 1970s. You watched it happen with the Catholic Church after the abuse crisis became public. The Southern Baptist Convention is not immune to that pattern. They are inside it right now. Here are 3 specific things to watch, verifiable things. Signal 1. The SBC annual meeting will take place in June of 2026 in Orlando, Florida. They are electing a new president. The candidate who wins will tell you everything about whether this institution has the capacity for genuine reform or whether it's going to continue to manage the decline. Watch specifically. Does the incoming president address the abandoned abuse database? Or will he declare a new age of growth? Will he point to the slight growth in baptism numbers and move on? Signal number 2. At 3.2% annual decline, now that's the current rate of decline that's happening right now, the SBC falls below 10 million members by 2034. 10 million is the threshold below which the SBC loses its claim to be America's largest Protestant denomination. Below that number, the funding model starts to fracture. State conventions lose their budgets. Seminaries lose students. The administrative infrastructure becomes unaffordable. Watch the 2026 and 2027 annual church profile numbers. If the decline accelerates past 4%, you are no longer looking at an inflection point. You're looking at a death spiral. Collapse is just around the corner. And signal 3. Watch the non-denominational church growth data. Not every SBC member who walks out the door leaves Christianity. The majority move to independent and community churches. The faith isn't dying. The institution is. And the institution that survives what's coming won't be the one with the biggest budget. It will be the one that kept a deal with the people in its pews. That deal should not include being politically active. It should not include supporting a candidate. It should be about following Jesus. Feed the hungry, clothe the naked, and welcome the stranger. So here's the verdict. As far as news goes, this story is not exclusive to the Southern Baptist Convention. I have talked about the collapse of evangelicalism on our sister channel, Loud and Clear, where I discuss faith, politics, and culture. I'll leave a link to that channel in the description box. Check it out. It seems like all evangelical churches are making similar mistakes. Sex and financial scandals, supporting a political party where they forgo the words of Jesus and allow themselves to get entangled in anti-Christian stances. The Southern Baptist Convention peaked at 16.3 million, then lost 4 million members over 19 consecutive years. They covered up sexual abuse for 2 decades. They commissioned a 288-page investigation into their own failures. They promised an accountability database to survivors. And they killed it. And they are calling this, in their own press release, growth. That's not growth. That's survival math. And the math is just not working. Finally, I want to add that the American church has moved far away from the idea of the original church. As I said before, churches of every denomination are part of the religious industrial complex. Money, power, and influence is the key to their survival and prosperity. And way too often they preach bad theology. Church leaders should leave the world of politics behind, get back to the Beatitudes. In the evangelical churches I have attended, I never heard a pastor stand against the genocide taking place in the Middle East. I've never heard one of these pastors support the SNAP program or Medicaid that provides food and health care for the poorest Americans. They've never supported immigration. This is because the white evangelicals sitting in the pews believe that the government should not help the poor and should get rid of as many immigrants as they can, because all immigrants are criminals. These views directly contradict the teachings of Jesus. Feed the hungry, clothe the naked, minister to the sick, and welcome the stranger. Jesus asked this of his early followers, and he is asking this again today to those of us who call ourselves Christians. If you enjoyed this video, hit the subscribe button now. Hit the like button and share it with as many people as you can, people you think need to hear the truth. This is Clear Signal, and I'm David Tomsic, and I'll see you next time.